Did I choose the right career? Like, or even when you get like just a diagnostic that you just can't figure out, and you know it's science, like you said.
Yeah.
So you're like, the answer is there.
You just
but I can't find it.
Oh my God. That was like all of last week. I don't even think I turned 30 hours. It was terrible.
Oh man.
Oh my God. I wanted to go home. I was like, what am I doing? I should just go deliver papers.
I should have been an exotic dancer.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, hey, I need to call Magic. We need to boot that thing back up. Jesus Christ, man. You know, we'll pretty much kind of slide right into it, and then we'll go from there. Feel free to ask us anything. I'm in the automotive business, but not Mario. Mario's the guy next to me. Well, I don't know.
Pointing the other way.
He's underneath you.
Underneath.
Yeah.
I may love cars, but I'm not like you guys and working on them, but I do love them.
Okay. Well, if you guys don't mind for me, like just kind of introducing yourselves and like what your backgrounds are.
So my name is Brian. I am, I guess I consider myself still an apprentice, but I don't think I would not consider myself an apprentice. I've been working on cars for a year now. I did lube tech for 6 months. I'm at a Ford dealership.
Nice.
Now on my own. I was with an apprentice for 6 months after being a lube tech. And now, due to some quote unquote drama with pay, I was forced to be now a technician.
Forced to be a technician.
By default.
It's like,
within a year, that's pretty fast. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, this past week was really rough. I was like, Jesus Christ, guys. You guys do remember I was changing oil 6 months ago, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of pressure, man. But I've been there. Yeah, when you're just kind of forced to, all right, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah. No, and I don't know. Are you recording already, Mario?
I am.
Okay. But yeah, no, that's kind of in a nutshell. I'm sure we can deep a little bit more into it, down into the end.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, and I'm Mario. Nice to meet you in person, finally. I'm actually a journalist. I went to school for journalism, so a little different. But I did that. But I've gone into like anything from communications, and now I do logistics for an international company. So that's always a fun time. But like, yeah, cars, I always try to keep myself close and try to glean on some new things here and there, and so I can at least be aware of what I'm doing. I feel like having Brian is someone I can watch and see what he's doing. Anytime he's like, I brought my car in, or my dad, and things like that. So I had to learn pretty young to do all those labor.
I see. Okay, so you're a bit of a DIYer.
A little bit. I like to see things going down and just get an idea of everything. So just in case I have to do something more to like just an oil change or pulling over to the side to change a tire kind of thing. I want to at least get an idea of that.
Yeah. I absolutely think like everybody should like want to have those skills, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people who don't. But it is empowering, right, to be able to like not to kind of know what's going on, and when you're in the middle of somewhere and you got to get shit done, then you can do that. That's pretty cool. So would you both consider yourselves enthusiasts?
Ooh, that's a good question.
In terms, I would say, and if I had like kind of branch different kinds of like the car world, motorsports for sure. I'm like all in. So, you can ask me almost anything. I'll be happy to tell you.
Really?
Like, I'd be happy to tell you about any different kinds of things like F1, Indy, NASCAR, like drift. I don't know. I'll be like, all right, I got it for you. But definitely, I'd say cars definitely. I think both Brian and I can say we're pretty like
I agree with
aware
that.
Or kind of like we'd like to pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
Me, like many people, I was forced to learn how to fix cars because poor. But now I actually like it now that I'm an adult. It's nice.
Yeah. I found it like I said, like really empowering because I feel like it's like a source of stress for a lot of people. We all drive cars, And when shit goes awry, to feel, you'll see somebody on the side of the road, and just to feel like, man, if you're stuck somewhere, you have no idea what the heck is going on, and you are at the mercy of, other people. It's a bit like going to the doctor for most, I imagine, and you're kind of like putting your trust in some other person and hoping that they're going to be honest with you. And then, how much money is this going to cost, and the amount of labor you have to pay for stuff. And it's a bit stressful. So to know, like, when all hell breaks loose, even if the worst thing happens, like, at least these things. Like, at least you're aware, like, okay, this is what's going to look like. This is what's going to cost. This is, or maybe I can save this much money in labor. And even though it might be a pain in the ass, at least I know how to do this. That's one thing I do think is pretty, like, I feel pretty privileged to be able to have that, especially in something that's so important as a car that we drive every day. I don't know how, I imagine out in Detroit, it's probably a little bit like it is out here, where, like, there is public transportation, but for the most part, everybody drives their own car.
Yeah, no, here everybody definitely drives. And it's funny because right now Detroit is kind of in an uptick, like, really hard, to where, like, it was bankrupt pretty much like just 10 years ago. And now there's so many, like, investment going on that, like, we have grid-led traffic now, more frequent, which is crazy. That was never heard of because people
really.
Yeah. And we have so many buildings. We have, like, BlackRock buying up properties downtown.
That sucks.
I'm like, oh man, we got to move out of here. Like, prices of houses and rent is going up. I'm like, $1,400.
And then all the parking lots being built. There's that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, it sucks kind of when you see some stuff happen like that, and especially in a place that, is your home. Unfortunately, California, that's where we live, right? So
that California is like the top of the mountain of, like, what's going to happen.
That's if you want to peer into the future, just take a vacation out to California.
I haven't been out to California to this day. I plan to one day, though.
Oh, really? Yeah. We have some beautiful areas. There's some beautiful places in the state. It just that, unfortunately, a lot of bad decisions have been made, and we're just kind of stuck living with it. So
I'm going to actually get into some of those down the road. So. But to kind of stay a little bit on that upbringing, tell us a little bit about yourself. Kind of, where did you grow up, and we'll get you into cars.
I am born and raised Southern California, so I used to good weather, but traffic used to a lot of traffic all the time. But I don't have any mechanics in my family, but my family is full of DIY. My mom grew up changing her own oil and doing spark plugs and stuff. So, but nobody was an official mechanic. And, growing up, I had a lot of uncles, and everybody would always make jokes. Just, I grew up with a bunch of uncles, and they all like to talk a lot of shit. So, and most, a lot of it is like, oh, you're a piece of shit Ford, or you're a piece of shit Chevy. So it was always like a Ford versus Chevy battle in my family household. And, so I grew up with a lot of jokes about that, and getting into, I used to live in Orange County, and I then moved out into the Inland Empire in my teen years, and my next door neighbor, who is now my fiance, we've been together for like 22 years. He was really into cars, and he had a 78 Coupe de Ville Cadillac on hydraulics.
Oh.
When they moved in, and I was, a young teen girl, and I liked cars. Didn't obviously have one myself at the time, and I always thought lowriders were super cool. And in my area, I didn't see them a lot. So when I saw them, I was like, wow, that's super cool. And the rest is history. We ended up dating, and he taught me a lot, because he was a big DIYer himself. He wasn't a mechanic at the time, but we both ended up going to school and became mechanics together. Oh, and so it was a little bit like Fast and the Furious-esque with
oh my God, it's Letty. Without the amnesia.
Oddly enough, she was like my hero when that movie came out. Like, I was like, oh, I'm going to be just like her when I grow up. And, but one thing led to another. I ended up actually getting really into imports when I was in high school. My first car was a 98 Honda Civic. So that's the gerbil everybody sees on Instagram. And, I had a buddy who went to Riverside City College and was like, hey, they've got a super sweet program over there. You should think about, going, because my high school didn't have automotive. And so I was like, oh, this would be awesome. My parents super against it. They're like, no, this is not what our daughter is going to be doing. Yeah, and they just want, they didn't want me sweating in a shop every day of my life, like doing manual labor. But, my career's turned into so much more than that. And I got to enjoy fun aspects of the automotive industry. And I think now they understand, like, oh, you were pursuing something that actually made you happy. So I think they're, proud now. But at the time, I think it made them very uneasy. But I was a graduate of that program, and I worked out in industry about 7-8 years as a technician. And I worked at private shops. I worked for a Honda dealer for a couple of years. I was a tech at a hot rod shop for a couple of years. And I have ADHD, and that definitely applied to my career. Because I was like, ooh, fun, shiny thing. Ooh, fun, shiny thing. And so, it's cool because it allowed me to experience so many different areas of the automotive industry. Like, I was a little bit of a chola in high school, so I was really into lowriders, and my fiance, who was my boyfriend at the time, we would go to a lot of lowrider shows, and so I kind of got that culture. And then later high school years, I got, Fast and the Furious came out, and I was really into the import scene. I worked for Honda for a little bit, so I was really into that. And then getting to work at the hot rod shop was completely different. Like, everything I had worked with prior was a lot of fuel injection, electronics, things like that. So going back to carburation was a big change for me, but I learned a lot of customization type stuff, a little bit of light fabrication, just ins and outs of old car shit, like is what the way they would say it. So I loved my experience there. Every morning I got to go into like a car show. It was just cool. We always worked on badass rides, and then after that I kind of got really interested in hybrid EV stuff. So I went to work with a friend of mine with his shop called Green Voltage, and we kind of got to play around with some stuff. And ultimately working for the college, I got to learn so much more off of that. But I also worked for a high school teaching automotive for about 4 years, Colton High School in the Inland Empire, before moving back out to my home, Riverside City College, where I graduated from. And I've been a full-time faculty member there now since 2018. So I'm in my 6th year, or 6.5, something like that.
Oh my God, that made me feel old. You said 6 years ago, 2018. Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
Yeah, so I've got to kind of dabble in a lot of different things, and I am really grateful for all the experiences that I got to have in the industry.
Oh, I know that. I mean, that's a pretty extensive
resume.
I mean, experience. Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh my God, but I mean, kind of sticking a little bit with teaching. Because you said you're 6 years in.
Yeah.
What's one of the things that you like about teaching? Because I know we kind of have a little bit of an insight of why you like to kind of battle with cars and stuff, but like what was that in you that made you get into teaching?
So a year or two before I graduated RCC, one of my instructors came to me with an opportunity with the position at school called supplemental instruction. And what that meant is I would essentially be kind of like a TA in class and like a model student. It was a paid position, and I held study groups for specific classes for specific instructors, which was him. And it was a pilot thing. Automotive is, people think it's easy. Like, people, I remember in the past would always say like, oh, you know what? I'm not good at anything else. So I'm just, and I'm a guy. So naturally I'm going to see if I can be a mechanic. And that's not the right way to get into it. Just to think like,
definitely not anymore.
No, and that time has gone on. It gets harder and harder to this industry requires so much skill and like brain power. And so people really just discount it a lot. And I think a lot of people get in thinking it's a lot easier than it is. So I think that's one of the big issues that kind of would happen. But I got into teaching because, or this position, I got into this position because students were having a hard time in classes. We had a high failing rate. And instructors were doing what they could to try to make things happen. But the problem is the students coming in did not know how to be students. They came out of high school, no study skills at all. Like I read the book. Isn't that studying? No, that's not studying. And especially if you have to memorize a lot of information, a lot of procedures and things like that. Like there's so much, it's like anatomy and physiology to try to learn how to be a nurse, like there's a lot. So, what I did is I held study groups to help students be better in those classes. And the goal was not just to, be a second instructor like a TA at a university. It was more than that. Like I had to teach students how to be students. Like pretty much I was successful in these courses. Let me teach you how to be successful in these courses too. And this is what this instructor kind of expects. And then also here's better ways to take notes to get more information in. And more than that, like it was also, hey, this material is really hard to learn. And there's a lot of concepts that have to be understood. Just as an example, like, you can't, to learn how to do compression testing, cylinder leakage testing, and power balance testing, like to learn the procedures for those tests is one thing, but to understand when and why you would do them is a whole nother thing. So to do that, now I've got to learn how the 4-stroke cycle works and internal engine components, how they work together, the timing, crank to cam ratio, the purpose of each stroke, what's valve overlap, and all of these things go into play to understand the numbers that you're looking at and when it would be appropriate to do those tests. So these are not easy things to just get like that, Right. And so doing what I did, I actually saw a tangible big change with students. Students were struggling before. They're not dumb. They just needed to be guided, like, here's how you squeeze this information in, and us talking about it verbally is going to help you remember, and we're going to get better at critical thinking together. And so we saw students' grades jump, 10, 20%, where all the only difference they were doing was just showing up to the study sessions. And when I got to see this, I was like, man, this is so rad. Like I get to talk about what I love, and I'm helping students do better and their understanding, and ultimately it made me better too. It made me a lot more solid in my foundational knowledge, and it allowed me to look at things from different perspectives, and I also got a lot of, to be around all the other instructors all the time. Like you can't help but absorb all this information. And so it was a great privilege to not only increase my ability, but it also taught me I actually really like working with students, and this is fun, and I get to talk about what I love and help other people at the same time. So that's when I was like, I did that for 5 years while I was a technician. So I'd go to work in the daytime, and then at night for the night classes, I would hold study groups. So I got a lot of experience doing it, and I was like, I know that, spending a long amount of years in industry is hard on the bones, it's hard on the joints, it's a hard labor job. And so this was kind of like, maybe this should be my retirement plan. I didn't expect to be an instructor until way later, and opportunity just kind of fell in my lap. And I honestly thought, I was like, some people would say 7-8 years of experience could be a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, to me, that's not a lot of experience at all. So for me, I was like, man, I don't know if I'm ready for this position. Do I have enough to pass down? And it was a hard struggle for me, but those positions don't come around that often. And especially with the school that I really want, if I was going to pick a school to teach at, it would be the one I graduated from. Right. And so I was like, well, it's now or never, shit or get off the pot, as they say. So I was like, I'm going to continue to increase my technical ability. So I spent a lot of my summers and my winter intersessions going to volunteer or do externships at different shops or different machine shops to try to just see how different people do different things. And, I think that helped me out a lot, but that's kind of how I got into that.
Yeah. And I feel like it's really fulfilling. I can tell it's very fulfilling what you've been able to do and accomplish for all those years. And I'm sure you get to see past students and maybe the next generation of students coming in. You get to see their love for it, and maybe some from your older classes get to come back and be like, hey, guess what I'm doing now? Or you get to maybe see them on social media, and I bet it's just like, wow, this is awesome for you.
It's the coolest thing in the world, man. Like, it's the coolest thing in the world. Like, I've got students that are in all over the place, and the ultimate goal, everybody's goals are going to be different, right? Mm-hmm. Some people are going to go into automotive journalism. Some people are going to go be technicians. Some people are going to go be service advisors. And then to see students meet the dreams that they wanted to achieve. That's the cool part. Because I have students who are like, you know what, I want something that is foundational and is going to bring me steady income that I don't have to worry about paycheck to paycheck. And they're working for school districts. They're working for fleet jobs. They're doing that. They're making it happen. I have students who always wanted to work for Honda. They became line techs at Honda. I have students who wanted to be line techs at Audi. They're line techs for Audi. I have students who wanted to work for Porsche. They're now technicians for Porsche. I have students who wanted to work for Ferrari. I have 2 students right now who work for Ferrari. I have 2 students who work for Tesla in different states. I have students who work for BMW across the nation, like 5 separate states. I'd like it. To say I'm proud it just doesn't feel like I can say it enough of like how cool. And that's all their achievements, but to have had a small piece in that journey to help make those opportunities happen in any way that I could, like I'm such a privilege, man. Such a privilege.
Oh, to add a little bit to that privilege, so let me give you a little bit of a background, because I actually met you before I saw any of your donut videos. Well, I didn't meet you, physically or, in person or over the phone, but I was a service advisor a year ago before I became a technician, right? And then I was like, but I had been going to school like really limited part-time for automotive, because I've always liked it. So I'm like, hey, what's the worst that can happen? So once I made that full switch, I was like, all right, so we're in full swing. We have to, start getting some state certifications. We got to make more money. We got to learn the material. So I look up, 101 for Dummies on YouTube University. Hey, I need to start passing these state certification tests. And I ran into your channel, which it's one thing I want to bring up. I don't think your channel gets enough love. Your channel should be a lot more popular. It should be animated. It should have graphics. Like, that's a whole other conversation we can have separately. Because to this day, and like I said earlier, I've only been working for a year, and full dedicated year. I'm master certified through the state.
That's badass.
Because of your videos.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So my life was like literally, like you said, like paycheck to paycheck. I mean, it's relatively a little bit over, but in 1 year I did and you're 50% responsible for, which is crazy.
Yeah, I have to vouch because he would tell me a lot about, and you'd even show me clips and other videos. I'm like, I can see where this is becoming really informative and helping him out, because it's like, he's right. It should get more attention on that.
And people ask me all the time, so how did you do it? I got to give the other 50% to my mentor that I cannot give him enough flowers for, taking the patience and, just to physically taking me under his wing. But the other half is you're the reason for that.
Man, wow. I mean, I appreciate you let me know that, but that's so cool. Like, yeah. That's really amazing to say that you went that far in a year. Like, that's really an accomplishment, and I'm happy to have had any hand in that. That's so cool, man.
Yeah, like so I would, and then I'm like, why is she not posting more videos?
So what happened? The only reason I ever made those videos was because the pandemic happened, and they told me, like, okay, we got to put some of our classes online. And we're like, you can't put automotive online. And so we bargained, because you're like, hey, do you want somebody changing your brakes who took an online brake course? Probably not. So we're like, well, we got to figure this out. We allowed our intro classes to be online. So the intro class, all of my videos are lectures of my intro class, and they went into my Canvas and like that they were assigned that. And, I had what they called synchronous lectures where it was live, but there wasn't just nobody's camera was on. There was no participation. Like, I could tell they just turned it on just to turn it on. And I'm like, what are we doing here? You know what? I'm going to make a recording. You can watch as many times as you want. And I'm not going to be distracted by like trying to do a dance to make people engage. Like, I'm not going to. So I was like, all right. So I I recorded them in my front room in my house. I bought some cheese ball, like, you know, a whiteboard and some markers. And I was like, well, we'll see what happens. I didn't know how to do any video editing. I still don't. It's so time consuming.
There's like bloopers. I've seen all your videos. There's a couple bloopers you left in there.
Oh, 100%. 100%. About halfway through that journey, I learned how to use iMovie a little bit. And so I kind of did a little, but it's like, I look back and it's all so poor quality. But I'm like, you know, I left it up there and made it public because I was like, you know, this will be good advertisement for the college. And these are little things that a lot of people, I think, might be having a hard time with. So I'm going to just post it all up there, and whatever sticks. But that's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, no. And to this day, people ask me, like, so how did you do it? Because I guess it's not very common for somebody to just be masterly certified in like such a. Because you got to think, I was doing oil changes for 6 months. So I only had like one certification for that period, and then the other ones I literally got them like week after week after week after week.
Wow, that's dedication, man.
And I'm like, you need to look up Miss A shop teacher on YouTube. And people would be like, really? I'm like, I'm dead ass. It's so funny. But kind of, you know, funny you said that a little bit earlier about like people going into the industry because they think it's easy.
Yeah.
I personally have seen, because when I first started driving was probably early 2010s. So I guess we weren't really at the level that we are now with cars, at least the general public cars, like, you know, Ford, Chevy, and Chrysler. Because now that I'm getting into the field now in 23, like the first requirement you get from Ford to be a tech through them, it's electrical. Like, you can't skip it. Now you can't even be a brake technician.
No, you can't do anything without electrical.
Which is, well, what?
Right. And that happens to be everybody's, you know, worst or, you know, most feared section. I think getting into it, it's the one that it gives them the most anxiety. It gives, you know, everybody kind of goes in with this heavy, like, oh God, we're just needing to survive. And like, honestly, that's why I love electrical so much. And I love teaching electrical. It's because I feel like it's one of those concepts that people overcomplicate. It doesn't have to be that complicated. I think breaking it down into bite-sized chunks and building up with those layers, you know, and going through, well, what is electricity? What do you need for any circuit? I don't care what the load is, for any circuit to function. Every circuit's going to need this thing, right? They need a power source. They need a power path. They need a load. It needs a ground path, you know? So it's just, it always goes back to those basic things, and having no continuity, the difference between an open and the difference between a short, the difference between voltage testing, like available voltage versus voltage drop. And Ford with their open circuit voltage test, I swear to God. But we are a 4 days program, so I've had to do like a lot of the electrical modules. I haven't gone through like the in-person classes yet, but yeah, the open circuit voltage testing drives me nuts because I won't go down that rabbit hole. But anyways, it's one of those things that if you can get the fundamentals, it makes everything else so much easier. You know, understanding Ohm's law, but not from like just looking at numbers. Like, why are we looking at Ohm's law? Why would I bother teaching you math? Because when you go to fix a car, you're not going to take out a sheet of paper and let me just bust out my Ohm's law pie chart.
Right.
That doesn't work like that. But if you understand how the circuit functions and you prove it with numbers to students, then sometimes, and everybody needs different tools to learn something, but it's going to fill in some of those holes of like, oh, that makes sense. Why, you know, in a series circuit, the load with the highest resistance is going to be the brightest, as to where in a parallel circuit, you know, you're not going to see as much of a difference, but actually if we did, it would be the dimmest. So it's to understand these concepts allows you to build up to something like CAN data communication and, you know, understanding the networks and different types of networks And then if you can learn how to be a wizard with a digital multimeter, an oscilloscope is going to be so much easier to learn. Like, to try to learn how to use a lab scope without just understanding digital multimeter functions, you're going to want to lose your mind, and you're going to think like, I'm just not smart enough to do this, and it's just one of those things. So I really enjoy electrical because it doesn't have to be that hard, and to be able to make something that is really daunting and, intimidating for people, be like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Okay, cool. That's cool. I enjoy that.
I mean, that kind of glazes over the concept of that my mentor kind of taught me, is like, you cannot fight scientific fact, right?
Exactly.
So if like it doesn't turn into a game of like, well, I think it might be that's wrong with it, into like, right. No, like that thing is getting no power. Your problem is there, not it might be there, and it's like, oh, right. That changes like the narrative of like, because there will be mistakes, and I still make them to this day, to where like I would check like a two pinholes and a connector. And I would be like, oh, I'm getting a reading. And he's like, check it again. Because he would already knew the answer before. And I'm like, I swear I'm getting a reading. He's like, dude, the cables are severed. Unless you change physics, right. You're not getting that reading. And I'm like, oh, shit, you're right.
Right, right.
I was in the wrong pins. And I'm like, oh, man, like literally, you can't go over scientific fact.
And that's just not such an important concept right there. Before I ever go testing anything, I'm going to look at the circuit, and I teach students to do this, and they think like, oh, what you have us coloring, like, come on. But to this day, when I go to do an electrical diagnosis on any car, most diagrams are spaghetti. Like they're right. Very complicated. Old diagrams, maybe not as much, but new diagrams, it's like, geez, what am I looking at? So I'm always highlighting circuits, like with the colors Ford uses, with your pink for power, orange for switch power. I love that because it tells your brain, I should see this. If I go to probe this before I ever touch the circuit with a meter, this is what I expect to see. So when I see something that's not what I expect to see, what does that mean, right?
Yeah. What do you think are some of the biggest like misconceptions that the industry has? Like right now,
I think the biggest right now is exactly what I said earlier, where you don't have to be very smart to be a mechanic. Like people do not understand the brain power that is required to be a good technician today, to be able to work on brand new cars. Like if there are some instances where you can try to just replace parts, and there's plenty of people out there that do that. But ultimately, we know that that's not really ethical, that to be playing with customers' money like that. So, I mean, that's something that goes into work ethic. Like, okay, if you want to be responsible with customers' money, if you're going to replace a part and charge them for it, you should probably have a test that you did that says this is bad because. Right. And I think we would all hope that if we sent our grandma or our grandpa or our aunt or uncle or baby cousin out to a mechanic, we would hope that they would be that ethical, Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like treat others as you would want to be treated kind of thing. And so I think not only that, you're just going to be faster at getting cars fixed. And we all know time is money, time is money. And sometimes you don't have to get under the dash to make a diagnosis. So just to make your life easier, knowing more is really just going to help you in all aspects.
Yeah, no, and I think the one thing that I have to keep constantly reminding myself is, because you said you had 8 years of experience, and you thought, oh, am I ready to go to the next phase, or to teach? And it's like, I'm a year in, and I'm like constantly beating myself of like, man, why can't I like fix this, or why do I not know what's going on? And like, right. I have to literally wind it back a little bit, like, because if I did, I'll probably be making 3 times what I'm making.
That goes with like a lot of careers too. It's like you want to know like anything, you want to know everything. So assume it's like, hang on, you gotta
like my mentor. Obviously, well, I still consider him a mentor, even though we're not directly, kind of working side by side. Like he makes, more than double what I make, but he's been working for 30 something years, like a lot further, than mine.
Yeah,
like,
no,
experience.
Right, and that's just like, it's half the battle. I always tell students, like, you're going to spend so much time here at school, and that's about 50% of what you need to know. The other 50%, you need to go out and get your experience, and you're going to make mistakes, but try to make the least amount you can, and try not to make the same mistakes over and over again. But we learn so much from our mistakes. I mean, we definitely learn more from our mistakes than we do our successes, So,
oh man, I got cussed out.
Yeah, because it stings. It stings. You're like, I don't want to touch that fire again.
Yeah. And then I have I almost consider it trauma, not from the person directly, but from that physical mistake of I don't especially breaking bolts, right? I remember once I broke a bolt. God. I broke a bolt on a bracket mount of a catalytic converter for Explorer.
No!
So that's part of the assembly, right? And I was like, oh, what do I do?
Right.
And my mentor's like, because I was like, should we order another one? He's like, are you stupid? He's like, you better weld that back together. Would you like to pay one if you were paying for this part for another one? I'm like, I guess not. That's pretty expensive.
Right.
He's like, so you better fix it. I was like, damn, when you put it in that perspective of you said, you don't want to play with customers' money, whether it's even the manufacturer itself. It's somebody has to pay for it.
If it has to go about it, yeah. Right. Man, have you ever broke a tap off in something yet?
No.
Oh my God. So you've already stripped the bolt out. There's already damage, and you're trying to go through with the tap to save the threads.
Oh no, I have broken a tap on a.
Oh,
was it on a bleeder screw of a caliper?
Oh no! Yeah, I've seen that happen before.
Damn it!
I don't know what it is about those threads. I don't know why I've seen so many people break taps in that. I haven't broken a tap in one of those, but I've seen so many other technicians do that. Yeah. But the instant feeling of well, I can't use my easy out to get that out. And they do make these pretty sweet tools now. That I didn't know this, obviously, until after a couple taps down the road. But where it has little fingers that'll go in between the tap, and you can use it to spin it out. I'm like, where the heck was that? I'm looking for cobalt drill bits. I'm like, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna get it out?
What's some of the either very good experiences or bad experiences you've had at previous jobs? You don't have to say any names or shop names.
Experiences
with the physical shop itself, whether it was administrative or a situation happened that you were maybe it's time for us to leave.
Honestly, it's probably my time at the Honda dealership I spent. And that was just because I got hired on as an express technician, and they held that carrot, and I already had a couple of ASEs going in, so I was probably 20 years old, 19 or 20 when I got hired. I already had a few ASCs under my belt. I had already graduated with 2 associates of science degrees in automotive. I had already worked at a private repair shop, and they hired me on as a loop tech. And I was like, well, okay, whatever. Everybody has to start off somewhere. Right. And they paid me as an express technician for 2 years. And 6 months after me spent time as a loop tech, I became an ASE master tech, and I at one point I was the only ASE master in the shop, and they still would not put me on flag rate, and but they had me doing repairs for technicians who were getting paid for my work. They were having me do they were having me do all this other stuff that was normally somebody would get to flag for. Right. And they just kept paying me hourly at whatever, I don't know, $12 an hour at the time.
Jesus. Wow.
And it was, you got to remember, it's a different time. So every job I had, I was the first girl ever, so I was always the zoo animal. And so I just tried to make sure that I worked as hard as I could. My goal at every shop I worked was, how much can I learn? I want to learn as much as I can. I want to be a better technician. And when I did that, I was always kind of felt I guess we'll take a chance on you. I think my boss at Honda at the time said, I'd like to see how you turn wrench, but, we'll find out. And I ended up, in my opinion now, older, like well over proving myself. And which is why they put me to go do other repair work. Obviously, if they didn't trust me, then I wouldn't have been doing that. But I allowed that because I'm lucky to be here. I'm just lucky that they keep me employed. I'm just so I had really low self-esteem at the time as a technician. And after that period of time, I was like, you know what? I know I'm worth more. I know I have like more credentials than anybody here. I know I'm good at diagnosing. I'm good at doing stuff. So I made the choice to leave. And then after that was when I had a buddy who was like, well, my buddy has a hot rod shop and he's looking for somebody. So I was like, that is completely like 180 off of a Honda dealership, but I'll give it a shot. And, I don't regret. I don't regret any of my experience because it allows me to help students not make those bad decisions. You know, how to ask for a raise, how to ask for a promotion, not to stay in a position or at a low pay for too long if you're providing, right? Like, obviously, if the shop's still investing in you, then, you know, you can't be like, I should be getting paid what the master tech's getting paid. But to know where you're at with your worth, you know, and to not let yourself get underpaid. And especially in this industry now, like if you bring in skills that other people don't have, that is not easy to come by. You know, the industry's not flooded yet. So I think it's important to know what you have. And if one shop's not going to offer you that or appreciate that, then you take it elsewhere. You know?
Yeah, hey, that's why the toolbox has got wheels.
Exactly.
Oh man, you know, funny you say that about like valuing and undervaluing yourself. I almost ran into that position because, like I said earlier, I was kind of forced to be like a technician in a way.
Right. Yeah.
So my mentor, and his name is Marlon, he told me don't undervalue yourself because from his point of view, he's like, you're already miles ahead of other people just by saying that you're not afraid of something. So, for example, it was like a BS recall that Ford put out, like all the millions of them they do for like their big size transits for that thing is their rear diff, kind of just essentially right out of the factory. You got to inspect it to make sure there's not a lot of shavings on the plug.
Gotcha.
And I, of course, because, you know, I kind of did a little speed run on the certifications. I am certified through the state to do that, even though I've really never touched a diff other than the class. And I literally looked at like the shop, I guess, what do you call it? The dispatcher, which is a female in my dealership. That's a whole nother conversation. Not bad pathway, but you don't see a lot of women in the auto industry. That's like, it's crazy.
At least over out here, a lot of the dispatchers seem to be females. At least.
Oh, really? And the only here is like just in the dealership that's not like the service advisor aspect. There's like I jokingly used to say, "Oh, we have 2 bathrooms," and then they are labeled men and women. And it's like, who's the other one for? And it's like it was a whole running joke. I'm like, we have no female technicians. Like, well, why do we have them labeled?
Most,
in a joking way.
Most shops I've been to, the women's restroom is the peaceful one where everybody goes to poop.
Yeah, it's like, depends on what's going on. You're wasting time, 10 minutes of your day. I got in the men ones. Oh, that's hilarious. I forgot what I was talking about.
No.
Undervaluing yourself. So, when I was put in that position of kind of where I belong, the dealership physically came to me like, hey, we understand that you're no longer being an apprentice under him, and they gave me an offer, like anything, because I'm sure they had already gotten a whiff of how my mentor is, and my mentor is like one of those like, hey, if you're not valued here, doesn't matter what I say, what anybody says, you got to look out for you. Don't try to like,
for sure,
don't try to be like naive or like that they're doing you a solid or like, you know, dangling the carrot like, here's $1, like. No, like literally leave. If that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. And they knew that he instilled that in me. And the offer they gave me for being a year in the industry, I'm not complaining. Like, Jesus. Because I was just changing oil literally for $16 an hour, like 7 months ago, which is crazy.
Right.
But that's that comes with the game of like, if you put that effort in, then that dedication and speed running test kind of like
100%. Yeah. 100% for sure.
And and I didn't finish the story about the differential. So after I told them, hey, this failed. We don't even have. It's a pretty small dealership where I work at, so we don't even have like full size lifts unless it's like the side and the back where it's like the diesel and all the heavy trucks go. And they were like, hey, Brian, can you change that diff? You got to do it. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll do it. Just find me a spot to do it because I'm not going to do it on the floor.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like again, going back to like kind of putting your foot down and then learning of like, hey, if a car gets repaired, your number's attached to it. If you don't feel comfortable with it, don't do it. And I was like, oh, that's not just strong of like, having that peer pressure of like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do it. It's like,
and I will say there's a lot of service advisors who are good at like, hey, customers, wait, you got to do this. We got to make this happen.
I did that for a year.
Strong-willed, you're like, God, okay.
Right. Nah, hey, waiter's going to wait.
Waiter's going to wait. Waiter's going to wait.
Oh, man. What's, to kind of, again, we don't have to mention names, shops, or anything like that. What's one of the biggest pet peeves of other technicians that you find annoying?
Gosh. I'll say two. I've got two. So, biggest pet peeves are people who don't know how to control their emotions. I hate that. Like, get a grip, bro. Get a grip.
Just put the bags in the fry, bro.
Just because you're having a bad day is not my fault.
Right.
I hate that. And I really, really hate, more than anything, a technician who won't share information because they somehow they think they're going to make them less valuable. Nope, I had to learn, so you have to learn. Man, you.
The gatekeepers, my God.
They're still going to
I hate that. I hate that. You know what? I think that's bad karma.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Be like that. Be like
that. That's fine. No, my mentor he would give me a whole lecture. He never made me learn the hard way, which I'm really grateful and, fortunate that I had such a nice man. He's still, he's actually in Cancun right now. Shout out to him.
Good for him. Good for him.
I know, he's out here living life. Man.
It sounds like he deserves it. Mentorship is so important. People who are willing to do that and do it with care and quality and like actually give a shit about the person that they're being a mentor to. I tip my hat to them because that's how we keep getting better as an industry.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, and that's the thing too, because at least when it comes to shops, or I'm sure different shops around the country, whether it's independent or corporate, you do see a lot of people. They go like, "Oh, that's my job. Why is that other people getting my job?" It's like, well, what's your name?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah.
For all, if you want, if you're willing to get the gravy shit, you should also get the ones that is gonna pretty much punch you.
Exactly.
And right now he does everything from drivability to electrical, and I'm essentially like a junior version of it. Everything that overflows out of his folder kind of comes my way, and I'm like, oh, I see why they kind of put me in the position they put me, because I was working under you, and he's obviously the most valuable technician that I'm confident can say on here.
Right, and that's a smart thing, that's a smart thing to do, especially when you have an old timer or somebody who's been in there for a long time. At some point in time, they are going to retire, and we need to keep feeding that, you just keep that talent by sharing that information.
Yeah, no, and shout out to all the good people that listen to this. Not gatekeeping information like a bunch of.
Yeah, don't do that.
Like a bunch of meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, literally. But what's you working on cars? We kind of touched a little bit on the type and die braking. What's the biggest mistake you've done in a car when fixing a car?
Oh man, I've made a lot of mistakes. And my memory sucks, but there is one that really it always just stuck with me. And so I was building a 454 at the hot rod shop that I was working at, and it was a supercharged engine that was going to be meth injected, and it was a little it was a street car, but it was a big boy street car, and I was gapping the rings for the CP pistons that were going in it. And I had a hand ring gapper. And I was just like, man, like, this is taking so long. And I was not like, I've developed quite the technique by now for that. Like, I think I would have been just fine, but I was like, really, I was making it harder than it needed to be. And, I was like, all right, I know my boss is probably going to be pissed because this is taking so long. Like, so I was like, how can I make this faster? And I took the little handle out and I took a drill, like a Makita, and I spun the wheel with an electric drill, and I well over gap. Now I know it was supercharged, so like a bigger gap wouldn't have been a bad thing. And there's a little fudge room, but I well over gapped it. So I went to my boss's office and I was like, I messed up, man. So I'll buy a new set of rings. Like, I really messed up. I'm sorry. And luckily I had a buddy who has some good connections at CP. Shout out to Joe. And he was like, hey, I'm going to go pick up some pistons anyways. Come with me. We'll go get a set of rings. Luckily, they sold me a one piston's worth set, and rather than having to buy the whole set. Yeah. I only got like $75, but I was so like, I felt so embarrassed, and it was just like, this is like a big deal engine for a big deal customer.
Right. And
I was just like, man. So, but anyways, you live and you learn. Just like one fun thing that, many fun things that I've done.
I'm sure that emotional cost was a lot more than the $75.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh man, when you mess up, it feels so bad, man.
Yeah. You can't help but take it personally.
Oh yeah,
just like, oh man, did I choose the right career? Like, or even when you get like just a diagnostic that you just can't figure out, and it's science, like you said.
Yeah.
So you're like, the answer is there.
You just
I can't find it.
Oh my god, that was like all of last week. I don't even think I turned 30 hours. It was terrible.
Oh man.
Oh my god, I wanted to go home. I was like, what am I doing? I should just go deliver papers.
I should have been an exotic dancer.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, hey, I need to call Magic. We need to boot that thing back up. Jesus Christ, man. Shout out to Diddy.
Well, for mechanics that they want to go into what they want to get into, you can take all the years and time that you want to be great, but also you have to have your tools and all the materials that you need for a good shop. Are there any that you look at and you're like, I want to just throw it off a cliff? Anything that you've ever worked with, or are there like the holy grails of tools that are like, they have to be with me all the time?
I'd say like I'm really particular with wire strippers. I actually do prefer Snap-on has like crimpers and stripper combos that are my favorite. Like I know I like a lot of other Klein tools, but man, they're strippers and crimpers. But granted, I was using kind of some low end stuff. But those and my Snap-on flush cuts, those are like, I don't go to any repair without it, because I usually do a lot of electrical work. But I would say, gosh, I never have used like any extractors that didn't make me say a lot of swear words. Like, but they're a necessary, like you had to have them. You can't get it out without it. But I have yet to come across ones that like just, are foolproof. Everything is, when it comes to broken bolt removal, it used to give me so much anxiety, but I teach an engine repair class and that's all we do is break bolts all day long. So I'm so much more comfortable in it now. And I've learned a lot, when you're going to try to extract something, the hole that you drill has got to be dead nuts in the center. And doing that on a not an even surface is super hard, even with a center punch. And then even then doing that, like, you get the hole started, and as long as you don't break a drill bit off, every time, not every time, I do get lucky sometimes with some extractors. Snap-on has some decent ones. I've used a couple of different ones, but sometimes it like, wow, I got it out on the first try. I'm going to go play the lottery today. Or I gotta try it for 2 hours, and then like, I've already worn out my stupid easy. So if somebody could just really make better extractors, I'd like that a lot.
Yeah, no. Up here in Detroit, we have the lovely thing called rust, and it's
fun time.
God,
it sucks.
You guys should get paid more. Like, you guys should get paid more.
State dependent.
And those Chicago techs and those Nebraska techs. Like, oh my God, I don't know how you guys do it. It just must be Broken Bolt Central. You guys do you guys have holsters for the torches that you have to use?
We have. I kid you not. Even our lube techs have torch. like, and it's like
just holster that.
You have to, and it's like because nobody's gonna be wheeling around that big torch set, with the tanks. So everyone has portable ones, and it's like, man,
the propane torches were great.
It's just great. We kind of went over it slightly when you said your favorite tools. So who do you have a loyalty, if you do, which tool truck?
Whichever one gives me the best discount. No,
you see this blanket right here? It's a $3,000.
Yeah. I honestly, between Matco and Snap-on, those are just what I are go-tos. It's what we use at school. But with that said, my battery is actually about to run out, and I am running out of time a little bit. So if there's any, sorry, I didn't mean to put a timer on you.
Oh, you're good.
No, I perfectly understand. I mean, the last thing that I wanted to kind of touch on, I do like Snap-on a lot. Shout out to Icon though.
100%. Hey, there's plenty of Icon tools in my toolbox too. They get it done.
Hey, they need a truck. People can fight.
Yeah, for sure.
Shout out to Manny too. Free Manny. he's actually supposed to give me a date. He's supposed to be on the podcast. So cool. So we'll see how that happens. But it kind of to kind of roll it down at the end. I can't end this conversation without talking about Donut. So after I saw your YouTube videos, I saw you on the channel, and I was like, why does she look familiar? And then I was like, oh, that's why. She does videos. And so how did that come to be? Was that something, again, kind of like the teaching gig where somebody just approached you? Did you apply to that? How did you end up?
Well, I'll give you the short version because I'm at 2%. So if it kicks me out, then you guys know why.
No worries.
And I'm at charge table. But I will say that they actually found my YouTube channel, and they were doing some research for some other video, and they kind of liked what I did. So they had me on for their first couple of Real Mechanics stuff videos, or Real Mechanics React videos, and they did well enough to where they birthed a whole new channel on its own. So the rest is kind of history there, and I love working with them. They're awesome to work with. They're a fun group of people, and it's always doing fun things. And again, it's more shot to kind of like promote our program and what I do, and I get to have a little bit of fun too. Every video I do over there, we have a blast. Sandro's a super cool dude. I love shooting with everybody over there.
Still slower than you though. now, to kind of have one of my
soon.
Yeah, no spoilers.
But then my last thing, because I shout out to my donut hack because I spotted this at a Zoomies.
I noticed that.
I think I got it at like a Zoomies in Orlando with my brother because we went to go watch the. We were there last winter for the Daytona 24, so we got just like, oh, I'll buy that. So yeah, why not? But it made me think about like because I think you've been to events with Donut too. I think one it was like a Formula Drift in Long Beach was one. Yeah. Like those kind of events. Are any notable ones that you've enjoyed with them?
Formula Drift was like, that was super fun to do. I had never had really fancy seats at the Long Beach location, so they hooked it up. And my daughter got to see drifting for the first time, so that was super. That was cool. Yeah, she was like, I don't know, 1.5 at the time, and was just like, yeah. She was so stoked. So that was super cool.
Yeah. I need to visit Long Beach for like Indy or Formula Drift. I'd really need to.
Formula Drift, go to Irwindale. There's not a bad seat.
Yeah, the House of Drift is what they call it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's the finale. So
yep.
I'm definitely going to be at that one. whether it's with donut or not. Like I just enjoy that event. So
like I'm going to that one. Regardless.
I would love to. I do.
Oh man! And my last question that I have here for you, it's kind of talking about California. So if you had the power to just erase a law from California's list, what would it be?
Oh, in terms of cars?
Yeah, in case of restriction.
Could be the import law could be one.
You know what? I'm sure that's a tough call between the import law or exhaust restrictions.
They're a little strict.
They're really strict out here. So that's kind of annoying, especially for motorcycles. Because for me, it's like for small cars and motorcycles, like, it might be annoying to some, but it keeps from accidents happening. So,
right.
That's kind of annoying. Emission laws can be a little bit stupid sometimes. Like I'm all about keeping the environment clean. I totally am on board with that, but it should be about what comes out the tailpipe, not what's under the hood. And we should be more concerned with, like, if a modification makes something better, then it, let's call it good. And there's a little bit of that with getting CARB certification, but they make them pay so much money to do testing for them. And so not every small company can afford that kind of stuff. So it just gets a little bit tricky.
No, and I think that's all that we had. I appreciate you, Angelina, for swinging in here and doing this a little speed run. Again, thanks again for changing my career path a little bit.
I'm so glad you're there.
Oh, man. Oh, no, she died.
She may have, like, just last second.
She died.
Okay, we'll fill in. We'll fill in the blanks for her. Brian, where can people find Angelina on?
They can find her at Miss.A_ the shop teacher on Instagram.
Yes, she does great work. It's got this man to my right over here on video.
Somewhere on the orientation.
Yeah, but that was a podcast.